Hello there. Welcome to Storytime with Writers Playground. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Merrick Humbert,
And I am Mariana Davila.
and we are your hosts. We have a great story for you today, and we're looking forward to getting into that. But first, what's been going on since our last episode?
We pretty much just been working hard on our current competition, reading submissions and writing feedback.
That's right. We did send out a status update to the participants last week, which pretty much just said that we're still on pace to be able to announce the winning stories, send out the feedback by the end of April. And we will send out one last status update at the beginning of April. And at that time, we will let you know the exact date on which we will announce the winning stories. So that is something to look forward to. And other than that, you went to see Wuthering Heights. And what did you think about it? You like it?
Yeah, I liked it. I went with low expectations because basically the critics have butchered it.
I saw one headline that said Emily Bronte died of tuberculosis, and Wuthering Heights 2026 is still the worst thing that happened to her.
I thought it was good. Like, I read the book recently. I reread it ahead of the movie, like a couple months ago. And yeah, like the movie is very loosely based on it, and I knew that, so I didn't go into the movie theater expecting it to be like accurate portrayal of the novel. And going in like that, I was able to enjoy it. I thought the acting was good, the photography is good, and overall, I enjoyed it. I'm not at any time was I bored or I was like, this is crap. I don't know, like, why the critics are being so harsh. Like, I understand the part of taking like a classic and reinterpreting it, but Guillermo del Toro did pretty much the same with Frankenstein, and you didn't hear much people complain. So I don't know. I think she's an interesting director. I wouldn't say she's great or anything, but I thought that Saltburn that we watched was interesting.
That was a fun movie.
It was a fun movie. I thought the first half was good, then it turned really silly, but it still was enjoyable. I think Wuthering Heights was enjoyable too. I would recommend it.
I want to ask you a little bit about the book because you read that first, I think a few weeks before you went to see the movie for the second time, I believe. But first, I want to give just a little background I want to share because I think it's really interesting. So, Wuthering Heights was written by Emily Bronte, and it was originally published in 1847, just 2 months after Jane Eyre was published, which was written by her sister, Charlotte Bronte. So both of those classic novels, written by sisters, came out the same year, which I think is pretty incredible. And it's also interesting to note that they were both originally published under the pseudonyms Kerr and Ellis Bell, masculine names to avoid any prejudice that the literary world at the time had for female authors. Also, on a side note, fast forward almost exactly 150 years later, Joanne Rowling publishes her first Harry Potter novel just using her initials, J.K., because the publishers told her and feared that young boys would not want to buy a fantasy book written by a woman. So I thought that was an interesting little factoid that prejudice was still there in the late 90s. And the last little detail I thought was interesting was that almost exactly a year after Wuthering Heights was published, Emily Bronte was dead at the young age of 30 from tuberculosis. But supposedly, a contributing factor and health issues that the whole family experienced and that contributed to all their young deaths was the fact that they spent their lives drinking water that had been contaminated by the bodies in a local graveyard, which is creepy. But so, what did you think of the novel?
I mean, the novel, it's very grim. It's the complete opposite of Jane Austen. So it's funny because, it's the same time period, kind of, and it's the complete opposite. All the characters are awful. I hated all of them. They have no redeeming qualities. And it's just very brutal, like, especially the main characters, Heathcliff and Catherine, are awful people. And you see how these repressed love that at that time couldn't be fulfilled just turns him into, I mean, he was always a vile person because he suffered abuse, right? But how these frustrated desire that he could never fulfill with Catherine just pushes him to the brink of like being the vilest person. All he seeks is revenge. And I don't know, I thought it was interesting. It was an interesting portrayal of characters, especially for that time, and especially written by a woman when women were like at that time, like Jane Austen writing the opposite, right? Just like
Very
these
romantic.
romantic.
Yeah, I read this was a little dark and
Yeah,
violent.
it's pretty dark, and that's another thing that was criticized about the movie, that the movie ends halfway through the novel. Like,
All right, last question about this, and then we can get into the story. But I was curious. You read this once when you were younger, many years ago, right? And then you read it again like a couple months ago. Is
yeah.
that correct? Did you notice any difference in the way that you received it? Because I feel like sometimes as I get older, my taste changed a little bit. I see things I didn't see before. So did you?
I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't remember anything about it. It's like I didn't read it. Like, I knew I read it, and I have a vague recollection that every character was horrible.
Do you remember liking it, or?
I remember I liked it, and that every character was horrible, and that's pretty much all I remember. But I didn't remember anything. It's like I didn't read it.
It was
almost.
like reading it
Yeah.
with fresh eyes almost. Okay, that's cool. All right, well, let's get into our story for today.
Yes, let us. Today we will be reading The Hothouse by Natalie Minaker, in which 15-year-old Sophia retreats to her childhood treehouse as she grapples with the weight of expectations and a future slipping beyond her control.
And the Hothouse won third place out of 697 entries in our last challenge, our 11th Playground Challenge. And Natalie Minaker is a talented writer from Worcestershire in the UK. Natalie also has won an honorable mention in our 9th Playground Challenge for a story called The Beekeeper of Mars, which is also available to read on our website, writersplaygroundllc.com. And she has had successes in other writing competitions as well, including a few New York City Midnight Challenges. So make sure to check out her website, nfminaker.wixsite.com/my-site, where you can follow and read more of her work. And that would also be available in the description wherever you are listening to this. But for now, enjoy The Hothouse. Here we go.
The Hothouse by Natalie Minaker. I cringe at the excess of punctuation as my fingers trace the letters. Sophia forever! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. I'd been 7 when I'd carved my name into the treehouse roof. 8 years later, the fortress built from old pallets and plywood still stands, only a hint of dry rot revealing its true age. Dad did a solid job. I lie back on the unsanded floor, splinters threading my back through my t-shirt. My commerce-clad feet dangle over the threshold, wafting in the summer breeze. I sigh as I accept that I've outgrown the treehouse. I'm a clear 2 feet taller than I'd been back then. That summer, before I turned 8, had passed in a blur of scuffed knees, sunburned peel, and ice cream drips. The treehouse had been my fairy tale castle, my pirate ship, my polar research station, my large hadron collider. Above all, the treehouse had been mine. Those summer memories and the treehouse itself now felt like they belonged to someone else. That September had brought endless days of tepid rain, which limited my time outside. Pained by water-stained paint, I'd been encased in the humid conservatory with only books and tutors for company, the garden obscured by the condensation of my own expelled sighs. September had also brought the diagnosis. I shouldn't call it that. Mom hates it when I use the D word. I sit up, my high ponytail kissing the low treehouse ceiling. 3 days ago, driven by both genuine need and a heavy dose of nostalgia, I'd waded through attic dust and retrieved my old science box. After the application of a rudimentary pulley system and a knowledge of basic physics, I hoisted the box into the treehouse. Privacy was hard to come by in our cramped 2-bedroom terrace, as was space for performing experiments. I opened the faded plastic lid. Underneath the still serviceable and recently redeployed my first chemistry set were some of my most beloved childhood books. Understanding Science, magical maths, and a favorite, simply titled Dinosaurs. By 8, I had far outgrown these books, so they had been sealed in airtight attic-bound boxes, replaced with tomes that traded colorful image for increasingly complex pages of text. It's important, the educational psychologist had told my parents, that Sophia is nurtured. A girl with her gifts needs to be stimulated, challenged. Challenged. That bloody word has haunted me ever since. The years since I'd been diagnosed as gifted had been nothing but challenge. I had the rosettes and trophies to prove it. I hear a clatter and shuffle to the treehouse entrance. Through the mossy glass of the conservatory roof below, I see Dad swearing at red and white shards scattered across the tiled floor. Mom shakes her head and leaves, probably to get the vacuum. Ah, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, and Saijian to my favorite mug. One of the perks of intensive years of homeschooling. I can be sarcastic in multiple languages. That's struggling. I guess, like perpetual motion machines, grand unified theory, and communism, the concept of his 15-year-old daughter leaving home was one that seemed much better in theory than in practice. But how could he say no? As well as a full scholarship, Cambridge had offered free on-campus accommodation with a full-time and thoroughly background-checked chaperone to ensure that I don't get too much of the full university experience. After all, I'm the girl who passed her GCSEs at 12 and got her 6A levels at 14. We've had multiple family meetings, i.e. my parents forming a committee of 2 with me as a neutral observer, where we have discussed at length my future and my potential. Yes, 15 is rather young to go to university, but you've been granted a golden opportunity to fulfill your dreams. If only I knew what those were. In the treehouse, I shift my weight, knocking the chemistry set which slides across the wooden floor with a tinkle of jostling glass. I lift the lid. Beakers, vials, and pipettes sit atop the remnants of my recent chemistry experiments. One of the test tubes has cracked. I lift it up to the light. A powdery residue is smeared on the inside of the broken glass. I'll have to up my game. Such sloppy lab hygiene won't be tolerated at Cambridge. Funny to think that my whole life started off in a test tube much like this one. Sophia Hughes, the long shot gamble. My aging parents' final roll of the IVF dice. Life-saving stake on one outcome. For Mom and Dad, seeing those 2 red lines instead of the familiar, solitary, heartbreaking one was better than a lottery win. As I'm reminded almost daily, I'm their little miracle. I hear a soft chime. Below, Dad leaves the conservatory to answer the front door. How long have I been up here? I ensured that Dad saw me climb the ladder to the treehouse, and I deliberately didn't return his smile. I have to set up the groundwork that I'm not all right. Step 1, complete. I think it's been half an hour. How long before he comes to check on me? My stomach churns. Even my dad, as emotionally blinkered as he is, would, through sheer annoyance rather than concern, eventually join me in the treehouse. Then we could have the difficult conversation. A conversation I would infinitely rather have with him than Mom. Hence my escape to the treehouse. God bless Mom's busted knee and inability to climb a rope ladder. With nothing to do but wait, I lie down and try to recapture the feeling of being 7 again, letting my head hang backwards out of the treehouse entrance. The world flips. The sky becomes a carpet of mossy, unkept lawn. The ground an endless ocean of blue. An archipelago of white fluffy islands formed by the clouds. Beneath me, the tree waves its green-fingered canopy in greeting. As a child, I could hear the great gasp of the trees as it inhaled the carbon dioxide from the air and the slow, measured breath of oxygen being expelled. I'd close my eyes and breathe in and out in time with the tree. I would metamorphose in the warmth of the sun as I joined the leaves in a union of photosynthesis. The mitochondria in my cells exchange for chlorophyll. Then I evolve again, no longer a tree but a dragonfly, Aesna cyanea, hunting near the pond. Now I'm a white Pieris brassicas butterfly, fluttering around Mons Butleia Davidi, unwinding its long proboscis to feed from the nectar within. Eventually, my atoms transmuting to water droplets, soaring high in the upper troposphere where I coalesce into a cirrostratus, gravity and air pressure condensing me into rain that falls back on the tree. It had felt so real, even if it was just pretend. Before my universe became the glass walls of the conservatory, I was on the cusp of a change I could feel but couldn't see. When I was 7, I could hear the heartbeat of the world. I closed my eyes. All I hear now is Mom vacuuming in the conservatory and the distant rumble of the motorway. I'm on the cusp again, but this time I see everything and feel nothing. I pulled a pregnancy test from my jeans pocket. They were still there, 2 red lines, an accusatory number 11, the first double digit and palindromic prime, or maybe it was 0011, the decimal 3 in binary. I doubt Dad would find these mad facts as comforting as I did. The boy's name had been Freddie, or Frankie, something beginning with F. He was one of the vaguely familiar faces I saw every few weeks at the academic tournaments. Last month, after the finals of the Young Natural Scientist competition, we snuck out of the hotel conference hall. In a deserted service corridor, we'd fumbled our way through a short, forgettable encounter. He'd seemed appreciative. Afterwards, as he cleaned his glasses on his shirt, he kept muttering his thanks. Before I can practice some potential conversation openers, that gray-haired head appears in the doorway of the treehouse. I jammed the test under the chemistry set.
Hey, kiddo.
He says. I wonder whether Dad can even remember my name. It's been years since I was anything other than kiddo, sport, champ. Hey, how goes the packing?
Fine.
The treehouse gives an argumentative groan under his weight as he pulls himself inside.
A few minor breakages. You could always help. It's your stuff.
Me? I throw my head back, mock diva style. I'm far too important for groundwork. That's why I have you. What you got there? I said, noticing the hefty piece of metal and glass he carries.
Postman just brought it. It's finally back from the engravers.
He hands over the trophy. I read the plaque. Sophia Hughes, Young Natural Scientist of the Year. I tap the metal rod spiraling out of the mahogany base. Gold-plated steel. It clearly costs less than last year's award, which currently shares a crowded shelf with the other meaningless accolades in our family trophy cabinet.
Check out this.
That says, pointing at the orange glass orb fixed to a metal base at the top. It's about the size of a golf ball, but completely smooth. I hold it up to the light. Not glass, amber. Inside, a fossilized insect. This year's tournament organizers have clearly just watched Jurassic Park. I look closer. This is no mosquito. It's a butterfly. Is this real? I ask. Dad nods. I look closer. This would explain the inexpensive materials on the rest of the trophy. Such a fossilized artifact wouldn't have come cheap. A blue-winged Proteus Persephone, I say. Late Eocene, maybe 35 million years old, probably from Colorado. That gives me a familiar, proud smile. My reward for doing a genius thing.
You know, you could switch to paleontology if you wanted.
He says.
Cambridge are so eager to have you, they let you do bachelor's in basket weaving if you asked.
There's no future in the past, I say. I'll stick with physics and maths, like you and Mom said. They're future-proof. I force a smile.
Good. Always be 5 steps ahead.
He says.
Remember what you learned from chess.
Why was it always bloody chess? My years on the Genius Kid competition circuit had taught me that the parental obsession with chess seemed universal, like it was part of the introductory orientation. Welcome to high IQ parenting. Here's your periodic table, scientific calculator, disdain for the arts, and a chess set. Why couldn't it have been Monopoly?
Your mom will struggle to find room in the cabinet for this one.
That says. She'll cope, I say, placing the trophy on the treehouse floor. It gives a slight top-heavy wobble on the uneven surface. When I was 10, I'd been sitting at the table in the conservatory, which by then had become my de facto study. Despite the rain that battered the glass roof, the heat was stifling. I'd been practicing my Mandarin Chinese while Mom had rearranged the trophies in the glass display case. I'm running out of room, Sophia. I think it's finally time for me to pack away these old things. I looked up from my textbook. Mom was filling a cardboard box with small, chipped, and some faded medals. Mom, no! Those are yours! She gave a dismissive wave. It was years ago. My dreams of being an Olympic hurdler are long gone. She'd placed her fingertips on a picture frame. Inside a photo of me shaking hands with the head of the UK Mathematics Society. At least there's little chance of a shattered knee ruining your future. She gave a brisk smile before readjusting the frame, closing the glass cabinet, and leaving me alone in the conservatory. I'd look at the smiling photo, trapped in a glass frame, in a glass cabinet, under a glass roof. Precious, preserved, perfect. But the smile was pretend. I'd got good at pretending. Back in the treehouse, Dad stares at me.
Are you okay?
So he'd noticed, at last. How to start. Dad, I'm not sure about Cambridge. I begin. I don't think I'm ready to leave home.
Oh, sport.
He says, shuffling closer and placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder.
This again? Me and your mom discussed this. You're more than ready. You need to believe in yourself the way that we believe in you.
But I'm only 15. Maybe I should wait a few years.
You're only 15 in Earth years.
Earth years. One of his favorite running jokes. Sophia Hughes wasn't actually human, but some advanced extraterrestrial species.
If we didn't think you were ready, we wouldn't let you go. You're one of the most mature, sensible, and level-headed kids. No, people I've ever had the privilege to meet. I honestly cannot believe that you're mine.
No, you were right first time. I am a kid. I shrug off his hand. Cambridge will be there when I'm 18. Maybe I could stay at home. Other kids my age are looking at sixth form courses. I could do that.
Why?
He looks at me as though I am speaking Chinese. I'm not saying never, I say. Just not yet. Why the rush? I could go to a local college, do art or drama or media studies or something. It would be a chance to expand my interpersonal experience, make friends with normal teenagers, go to parties, get a boyfriend.
But why wait? You've outgrown this town. Outgrown us. Look at everything you've accomplished.
He nods towards the trophy, a butterfly perfectly preserved in amber. I'm suddenly reminded of a butterfly that got trapped in the conservatory when I was 12. How, in its panic, it battered itself repeatedly against the glass, seeking escape to the garden outside. Time for step 2. I can't go. I take a deep breath, reach under the chemistry set, pull out the pregnancy test, and hand it over. I'm so sorry, Dad. I expect screaming, shouting, tears. Anything would have been better than the absolute silence that followed. People assume that having a high IQ comes at the cost of reduced emotional intelligence. This isn't true. Right now, for example, I can read my dad's emotional state as clearly as I could a table of statistical data. First is confusion, swiftly followed by a brief moment of doubt, which merges very quickly into acceptance. Then a brief flash of anger before he finally settles on resigned sadness. Well done, Sophia. You've done it. You've actually broken your dad's heart.
Who?
He asks, looking anywhere but me. Just some boy. My stomach fills with guilt. This is what I wanted. In that underwhelming 3 minutes in the service corridor with the boy whose name began with F, I wanted this. As I fumbled with my trouser bottoms, I had just one thought. They can make me go to Cambridge if I'm pregnant. Dad sighs and finally looks up. For a moment, I have no idea whether he's going to cry, shout, or hurl himself out of the treehouse. Suddenly, he pulls me into a hug.
It's okay, Sophia. It will all be okay.
The tension leaves my shoulders as I allow his arms to envelop me. I don't deserve this blanket of love and support, but I'm still comforted by the solid thump of his heartbeat as he presses my head against his chest. We've stepped past someone's seen threshold. Everything's going to change now. For the first time in my exceptional life, I'm not perfect. I knew I made a mistake the moment F. Boy's footsteps had faded from that corridor. What the hell had I been thinking? I didn't want to go to Cambridge, but risking a teenage pregnancy, not to mention all manner of STIs, was uncharacteristically rash for me. Then I suddenly realized there was a better way. The following morning, under the pretense of going on a brain-boosting run, I caught a bus into town and bought the morning after pill from a stony-faced but not unkind pharmacist who was rather confused why I accompanied my purchase with a dozen pregnancy tests. In the treehouse, Dad whispers into my ear.
I'll talk to Mom. Leave her to me.
Thanks, I sniffle.
We'll do whatever you want to do, okay?
I give a snotty nod, surprised by my real tears. Seems I don't need to pretend to be emotional. The science behind pregnancy tests is pretty simple. An absorbent strip imbued with monoclonal antibodies that turn red in the presence of the hormone HCG detectable in the urine of pregnant women. It's easy enough to mimic the effect with the right mixture of alkaline solutions, such as the types of chemicals one might find in a child's chemistry set. It took some trial and error, but the deception was necessary. No simple hand-drawn red line would fool parents who'd spend a decade staring at negative pregnancy tests, searching for any faint signs of a positive. Still, I know that a fake test would be just a short-term fix, buying me a week at most. But by that point, we'd be on step 3. Dad will have stumbled upon the piles of failed pregnancy tests in the chemistry kit. I'll make sure that he also finds how to fake a pregnancy test in the search history of the family computer. Step 4 will be when Mom and Dad have a long conversation. They might even let me be part of it. Who would go to such lengths to fake a pregnancy? Clearly, Sophia isn't as mature as we thought. We're sorry, sweetheart. It might be best if we delayed Cambridge just for a few years. Please don't be too disappointed. Maybe we should look at getting you some help and support. Step 5. I will suggest enrollment in a local college, one with great pastoral care. Always be 5 steps ahead. Thanks, Chess. I let Dad hug me as I breathe in the clear, cool air of the treehouse. A light breeze dances through my hair. A butterfly glides by, blue wings gleaming in the summer sun. It's not a perfect plan, but it will do. If Mom and Dad won't listen, refusing to see me as anything but a mature, older than her years prodigy, then I'll show them. I'll make them believe that I'm just a dumb, scared kid who's not ready to leave home, even if it is just pretend.
That was The Hothouse by Natalie Minaker. And what an excellent piece. The first thing that we have to mention is obviously the twist. That she's not really pregnant, but that she faked this test in order to get out of going to Cambridge. And I thought that was so great. I know Marianne and I often feel like we can see twists coming, but neither of us saw this coming at all.
No, it really comes as a surprise. She does such a great job setting it up with the details about sleeping with the F-boy, and the double meaning there is also quite clever. And how she went into wanting to get pregnant, but then how we learn in the end she smarted up and came up with this idea. It just all came together so well.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was very well crafted with the misdirection. The details that we get early on still make perfect sense when we get to the end. And that can be a problem that we sometimes run into with twist endings. That once we get the twists, some of the details that we got earlier in the story, looking back, no longer really makes sense when you think about it. But in this case, all the details came together beautifully, and the motivations make sense and are easy to empathize with. And as I said, it was very well crafted.
I totally agree. Another problem that we come across in these competitions, specifically concerning stories with twist endings, is that we often find stories that are too dependent on the big twist or the big revelation that comes at the end. Sometimes it feels like information is just purposefully being withheld for the effect, and that can be clear to us as we are reading, which can be frustrating. Or in other cases, for example, there is a mystery that is set up with vague details, and there's not much character development going on as we make our way through the story. And once again, in these cases, it can feel like we're just waiting for the big revelation or the twist to come, Like we're just waiting.
Yeah. And that's what we mean when we say that a lot of times a story can feel too reliant upon the twist. Even if the twist is amazing, if the first 9 out of 10 pages aren't compelling and we're not invested and engaged in the story, it doesn't matter how great the twist is. But that wasn't the case for this one.
Right. But that was not the case for this story at all. In this story, we were engaged in the narrative at every moment, from beginning to end, and the character development is excellent.
Yeah, I love all the specific details that we get, which really show like how smart this character is, from the different languages she can speak to the scientific terms she uses, the award she won, that one line in which we read, it said, an accusatory number 11, the first double digit in palindromic prime, or maybe it was a 0011, the decimal 3 in binary. Just felt very authentic that this character is actually genius, pretty much.
Yeah, and there were so many specific details that added to the character development. How we learned she was an IVF baby, their little miracle. In a sense, there was pressure put on her even to exist.
Yeah, the details that we get about her mother's bad knee, how she took down her own awards to make room for Sophia's, which sort of symbolizes that they are making sacrifices for her, so she better live up to that.
And then the details we get about chess becoming a parental obsession. One of my favorite lines was, welcome to high IQ parenting. Here's your periodic table, scientific calculator, design for the arts, and a chess set.
Yeah, that was a hilarious line. And ultimately, the heart of the story, the conflict, is easy to empathize with. It becomes clear early on that there is still a kid in this character. She's only 15. She's up in her treehouse. We get the line about how it had been my fairy tale castle, my pirate ship, my polar research station, my large hadron collider. And then we learn about what she calls the D word, diagnosed as gifted, and how her whole life had been a challenge since then, and she didn't really have time or the opportunity to just be a kid. And it's clear that she just wants to slow things down a bit, not be in such a rush to go away to college at only 15, and, not be in such a rush to get to her future. All of this was very well developed and easy to connect with and understand how she feels.
And the idea that she could figure out how to fake a pregnancy test was just so unexpected.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, with her science knowledge. The scene with her father, as we see him being so supportive when she tells him she's pregnant, that everything will be okay, and that they will support whatever she wants to do, is very touching.
I thought so too. And then to contrast that, her whole plan seemed so cold and calculated, and how she's really manipulating them with this. She goes through the steps of her plan in a very measured way. Step 4, step 5, sort of chilling, but it's also kind of badass, I thought, and even though it does feel wrong.
There is interesting complexity to it for sure. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
I think that's about it.
Okay, so for the prompts, Natalie chose a treehouse for the setting. The character she selected was a teenage prodigy. And the one thing that everyone had to include in this challenge was a piece of amber with something organic in it.
Yep. And if you enjoyed this piece as much as we did, make sure to visit Natalie's website, nfminaker.wixsite.com/my-site, and you can check out some more of her work there.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Storytime with Writers Playground. We, of course, appreciate any support. If you can like, share, follow, subscribe, whatever, we really appreciate it.
Yep. And we'll be back in 2 weeks for our next episode. For now, we will get back to reading your submissions and writing feedback. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.